Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Newsbrowse News broadcast. The foreign ministers of Britain, Germany, France, and Italy have voiced deep concern over an Israeli death penalty bill, warning it would disproportionately target Palestinians and undermine democratic principles. The death penalty for terrorist bill, supported by far-right lawmakers, is nearing a final vote in the Knesset after passing its first reading in November. Critics, including human rights advocates and United Nations experts, argue the bill's vague definitions of terrorist offenses could lead to mandatory death sentences that violate the right to life. They also highlight that the bill lowers the threshold for conviction to a simple judicial majority and prohibits pardons, while allowing executions by hanging within 180 days. Supporters, like Itamar Ben-Gvir, claim it acts as a deterrent. However, Amnesty International and the Israeli Information Center for Human Rights in the Occupied Territories contend it grants Israel carte blanche to impose death sentences on Palestinians, potentially amounting to war crimes and normalizing state killings. Israel abolished the death penalty in 1954 for most crimes, with exceptions for genocide and treason, notably used in Adolf Eichmann's 1962 execution. Gu. According to NBC News, Senator James Lankford, a Republican from Oklahoma, stated that he would not rule out supporting the deployment of U.S. ground troops in Iran. He told Meet the Press that any such operation would require clear objectives and a commitment to finish the job, explicitly distinguishing between rapid special forces operations and a prolonged occupation. Lankford also highlighted that Congress would become actively involved in discussions about the scope and plans of military action when the Pentagon's $200 billion funding request for the war is submitted. This comes as thousands of additional U.S. troops arrive in the region and President Trump explores options for ground deployment. In contrast, Sen. Cory Booker, a Democrat from New Jersey, criticized the administration, calling the situation a presidential blunder and condemning the lack of congressional authorization for what he termed the biggest military engagement since the war in Afghanistan. Meanwhile, Iran's parliament speaker warned that the country is prepared to retaliate against any U.S. ground attack. According to China.org.zn, the United States Coast Guard permitted a Russian-owned crude oil tanker to reach Cuba, effectively ending months of an oil blockade against the island nation. The New York Times reported that the tanker, carrying an estimated 730,000 barrels of oil, was within Cuban territorial waters on Sunday evening and expected to arrive in Matanzas by Monday night. Although the U.S. Coast Guard had vessels in the region capable of interception, the Trump administration chose not to issue such an order. This development is crucial for Cuba, as the oil supply is expected to provide several weeks of relief from a rapidly escalating fuel crisis. Since January, the Trump administration had intensified oil restrictions on Cuba and issued military threats, with President Trump even stating Cuba is next after discussing Iran. Russia, through its foreign ministry on March 17th, condemned the increasing U.S. pressure on Cuba, reaffirming solidarity and pledging necessary support, criticizing attempts to interfere in a sovereign state's domestic affairs with illegal unilateral measures. Thousands of individuals gathered in Istanbul, Turkey, on Sunday to protest the ongoing Israeli and U.S. attacks on neighboring Iran. The rally, held amidst rain and organized by local Muslim humanitarian aid groups, saw demonstrators loudly chanting for an immediate cessation of these military actions. Participants expressed deep concern over the conflict. One woman voiced her desire for the strikes to stop at once, stating she has had enough of innocent people shedding blood. Another protester highlighted his view that the U.S. and Israel are persistently violating international law, thus turning the world into a lawless place. A third participant from NHK News also noted his sadness over many countries' silence, but expressed hope that voices are finally being raised and that the movement will spread exponentially. NTD News reports that the Artemis II mission is fast approaching, marking the first human journey to the moon since the Apollo program in 1972, precisely 53 years ago. The crew, comprising NASA astronauts Reid Wiseman, Christina Koch, and Victor Glover, alongside Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen, arrived at Kennedy Space Center on March 27, 2026, for final preparations for an anticipated April 4th launch. This historic 10-day mission will involve a crewed lunar flyby, orbiting the moon without landing on its surface. Notably, the mission includes the first woman, the first person of color, and the first non-American to participate in such a journey, carrying significant implications for both the United States and broader geopolitical affairs. Experts are weighing in on its importance, and the astronauts have been answering questions from reporters. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.